Hey everyone, Mr. Sejano here today. I'm going to do something a little different on my channel, and that is show off part of my collection. In a previous video, I mentioned that I was a small-time collector of games that are near and dear to me, and it just so happens that Street Fighter is one of those series of games that are very near and dear to me that I log tons of hours playing, and I still play them and don't get bored of them. So I'll get started showing off my collection. It is by no means complete, but it's complete to me. So there are still a ton of games out there for different systems, some that I will probably never own, but I own the ones that I still play. So let's get started on this one. So I'll get started with my super cool Street Fighter 2 hat. My wife laughs at this one. But anyways, this is my Street Fighter 2 hat, and I'll turn it backwards because today we mean business. All right, so we'll get started. This is one of the games that I first started playing Street Fighter on, or one of the games I started playing Street Fighter with. Pardon me, I'm having trouble talking today. Anyway, it is Street Fighter 2 for the Game Boy. This is a very fun game. It runs a little slow, but it helped introduce me to the series. Back where I grew up in a small town. We didn't really have an arcade at all, not even a pinball machine anywhere. We just had consoles. So I grew up with consoles, not in the arcades. But anyways, this one introduced me to Street Fighter. Then also on the Game Boy Color, I've got Street Fighter Alpha. This game's a lot of fun. I'm seeing if it's in focus here. Just have to hold it back a little bit. Anyways, this game's a lot of fun. I would say it's the better of the two. The original Street Fighter for Game Boy sounds better, but this one plays a little better. It's a little faster. Moving on, for the Game Boy Advance, I think is where Nintendo really hit the mark. And they got Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the Game Boy Advance. I like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo slightly better than Street Fighter Alpha 3. They both play very well, but Turbo is my favorite out of the two. Alright, I'll just keep this theme of the handhelds here, and I'll pull out something a little more recent. I've got two of them. Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max for the PSP. The reason I have two is because one is open and the other one is still sealed. I will, I think, at a later time end up selling my sealed copy. I'm just holding on to it for the time being. If I want to keep it, I don't need two of this game, but I've got to. So we'll see. So if someone decides they want to pay a ton of money for it, by all means they can have it out of my collection. It's not worth really anything right now, but I like having it, and I'm not really trying to sell it right now. So that's what I've got for PSP. This is a very good game. I would say this is probably the best iteration of Street Fighter Alpha 3. It has all the characters. It's got everything to it. It plays very, very well. And if you emulate the game, it plays actually really well too on PPSSPP. So cheap plug, but check out my other video for emulators, especially Android emulators, and it'll show you how to emulate this one, or at least how to get the emulator for it. Moving on, give me a second here. I'll grab some Super Nintendo ones. So I've got the Japanese version on Super Famicom, as well as some North American ones. So we'll start out. I've got Super Street Fighter, or sorry, just Street Fighter 2 for the Famicom. I've got Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the Famicom, and I have Super Street Fighter 2 for the Famicom. Now, the unique thing about Famicom games, actually just Street Fighter games on the Famicom, these ones you can actually play without knowing Japanese language. Street Fighter actually has English menus on here. Some of the options are in English. Character names are in English. So it's really weird that way because it is a Japanese game. But mostly everything is in English. Now, if you want to know what the characters say after each battle to each other, that'll be in Japanese. But generally, everything else is in English, which makes this one of the very few games. It's unique in that manner. You can actually play it in a different language, and it doesn't matter. So that's kind of cool, and that's why I have the Japanese ones in my collection, because I also play the Japanese ones. They play the exact same. The only difference are character names. For example, I think Vega is called Balrog, M. Bison is the boxer, and the final boss is Vega instead of M. Bison. So those are actually, I think that's one of the only differences. But besides that, if you can, pick it up. It's pretty fun. So we'll go on to my North American Super Nintendo games. I've got a few of them right here. Start off with Street Fighter 2 for the Super Nintendo. Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the Super Nintendo. This is probably the best version of the game. It's not my favorite, but it is probably the best. It probably plays the best. It sounds the best. But I recommend Super Street Fighter 2. So this is my favorite one out of the series. It's actually my favorite Street Fighter game. It's not my favorite game. It's my second favorite game. My favorite game is Capcom vs. SNK 2. But my favorite Street Fighter game is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So this is this SNES version. It doesn't have the turbo feature, but it does have a speed increase, so you can increase the speed 3 times, 3 stars on it. So there is that, and this one is actually a ton of fun to play. So I played the heck out of this one back in the day on my Super Nintendo, and I still play the heck out of it via emulation. It's a ton of fun. I've actually got 2 copies of it. So I've got my primary, and it's important enough to me that I wanted a backup as well. This is the one I play. This is actually the Street Fighter game I probably play most of all time. This one right here, Super Street Fighter 2. All right. And lastly, I have a little bit of a gem here. Street Fighter Alpha 2. So this one on the Super Nintendo is a very expensive game. If you can find it for cheap, find it for cheap. It plays interestingly. There's a lot of loading involved and a lot of pausing in weird areas. A lot of people don't like that, but at the same time, games on other systems also load. Like the PlayStation Street Fighter games are horrendous loading times, especially the Street Fighter Collection. That one, it between matches, after matches, it just loads like crazy. So this isn't that bad in comparison, and it's actually kind of fun, and it's very unique on how Nintendo actually has this running on a, like how Capcom ported this to the Super Nintendo and how it actually runs on a Super Nintendo. So that's really cool. Moving on from there, I guess I'll go on to the Genesis. I've got 2 for the Genesis. So I've got Super Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition, and then I've also got sorry, did I say Super Street Fighter 2? Anyways, just Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition and Super Street Fighter 2. Now, the difference between Super Street Fighter 2 for the Genesis and Super Street Fighter 2 for the SNES. Now, there are a few differences, I'll say. First and foremost being the sound. So Sega and Capcom, they did not get the sound right on Genesis. It sounds so bad. It's atrocious. Like, it sounds terrible. It's very tinny and it sounds like crap. The graphics, I would say, are a little more polished on Super Street Fighter 2. So graphics and sound wise, this is your bet. Gameplay wise, this is your bet. So if you just are on mute or don't care, pick up the Genesis version. If you have the choice between the two and you only care about gameplay and that's it, the Genesis version is your way to go. But if you care about everything else, pick up the Super Nintendo version. The Genesis one, the reason I say the gameplay's a little better is there's an extra speed star on this version of the game here on Super Street Fighter 2. This one goes up to 3, this one goes up to 4. On top of that, the speed stars are all unlocked in the Special Champion Edition here. You don't have to hit a code. So in the SNES version, there's a code to unlock the extra speed ratings in this one. But in the Genesis version, there is not. It's just unlocked right away. So the Genesis one for gameplay overall, but the actual game itself as a whole, so like as a complete end-to-end game review, I would take this one hands down. But anyways, moving on from there. Oh, I forgot one in my handheld collection. Super Street Fighter 4 for the 3DS. This one's interesting. There are two screens on the 3DS. On the bottom screen of the 3DS, there's there's 4 buttons for the special moves. You just hit it once. It's kind of cheap, and online it makes incredibly interesting matches, I'll say, because people are able to execute these commands at the touch of a button, and a lot of the times it's next to impossible to do that in real life, just because if you're using the controller and moving a certain way, and then all of a sudden someone pounds off one of those moves. It's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting. If you have a 3DS, pick this one up. It's actually still played online. You can still find some matches online for it, but the people there are pretty good. I'll move on to a unique item in my collection, semi-unique, I'll say, and that is Super Street Fighter 2 X. So this is the Japanese version of the game. Like I was saying before, it doesn't matter if you have the Japanese or the American version, or English version if you have the PAL versions. They all play pretty much the same. The only minor differences is usually just the text between screens. So this one is for the 3DO. This one, the reason I have this one is because I picked it up for $4. If I want the American version, it's way too expensive and not worth it at all to me. But this one right here is very interesting. So it's got, it doesn't have the old costumes in it. So if you're looking for like original Ryu or original Sega, you can't find them in this game, but it has amazing sound. The sound in this game is second to none. Like, it's really, really good. Just listening to the game on its own, just for the sound, is really cool. Like, this game is awesome. So I've got this one in my collection. I'm really proud of it. Moving on from there, I've got, let's see here. Sorry, just got a collection of games I'm going through. This one is my actual, one of my only complete in boxes, as in actual boxes. I don't count, for example, this is sealed brand new. I don't count this as, it technically is complete in box, but it's not, there's no actual box, it's case. So maybe complete in case. But this is like one of my only complete in box games that I have in my collection, my entire collection. And that is Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the PC. To get this to work on PC, you actually have to run a DOS program. I think it's called FreeDOS or something. But anyways, if you actually want to use this one on your PC, you have to run that program unless you have an older PC. This game is a little gem in my collection. I love it so much. I played this one a ton as a kid, and it is a lot of fun. It's I highly recommend it. Picking this one up if you're a collector, if you can find it for a good price. I was very fortunate to pick this one up complete in box, and the CD itself is mint. I am really happy about it. I was actually able to rip an ISO off the CD and use it on my computer, so I don't have to have the CD in it to use it. I'm super pumped about this one. This one's actually probably one of my favorite in my collection. It's really cool. Moving on from there, I guess I'll show you another unique game that I have in my collection. Oh, maybe I won't. I'll get to that one later. I do have one Street Fighter game for the Gamecube, and that is Capcom versus SNK 2. I guess this isn't really a Street Fighter game. It's just a fighting game, but it falls loosely under the Street Fighter guys. It's Street Fighter versus the SNK team. It's really cool. I really like it. The easy operation, a lot of people don't like. If you don't like it, just don't use the option. But it just makes the commands easier. And, you know, some people need those easier commands. You know, if I won't get into details on why. There could be a million reasons why you'd want to use the EO options. But if you don't like it, just don't use that option, and it plays great. Going on from there, I guess I'll go into my PlayStation 2 collection. Just pardon me, I'm trying to organize like 30,000 games here. Not 30,000, but like 30. Let's see here. Here we go. All right. So we'll start off with one of the early Street Fighting games I got on the PlayStation 2. And just a reminder too, I lived in a small town. I had dial-up internet, so I didn't really know what the Street Fighter scene was. I just liked playing the games. So I didn't have an arcade to go to. I didn't have high-speed internet to check all this stuff out. I didn't even know. So I saw, for example, this one in the store, Street Fighter EX3. I picked it up. It's not one of my most favorite Street Fighter games. It's all right. It's got some interesting characters like Skullomania. But it's an okay game. I wouldn't say this is a must-buy by any stretch of the imaginations. It's okay. But I picked it up. I played it a ton. And then this one kind of kept my Street Fighter interest alive, I'll say. And then when I played this and it was like I'm kind of thirsty for a little more Street Fighter, I picked up some other ones that I really, really like. So I'll start out with this one here. So this is Street Fighter Alpha for the PS2. So this game, Street Fighter Alpha Anthology. So this one has a ton of games. I think there's like 5 games in here. I'm going to look at the back. Yeah, there's 5 games. Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha 3, and Super Gem Fighter. Super Gem Fighter is weird. It's really cool, but it's weird. I would highly recommend picking this one up just to play it. There's a ton. If you like the Alpha series, it's a must-buy. The Alpha series is, I find, a little more cartoony, but that's not a bad thing. It's actually kind of fun. It's Alpha 3 is right up there in my favorite games of all time. So definitely pick this one up and check out Gem Fighter. It's cool, and you can actually still buy these, I think, brand new for like $13 or $14, like the brand new on Amazon. So take a look, because you can still get this game brand new, which is cool, and one of the reasons why I like collecting for PS2. Games are cheap and also usually brand new still. This game I highly recommend if you are collecting for PS2 or looking for a good Street Fighter game, and if you only could get one Street Fighter specific game, get this one. This is Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. It's got 2 games on it and a movie. So it has Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is one of the staples, I would say, in the Street Fighter community, as well as Hyper Street Fighter 2. And there's a Super Turbo option within the Hyper Street Fighter 2 game. There's also, I forgot to mention, there's also unlockables on both games. Just take a look, because it's going to take way too long to explain. But you can unlock games on both of these, both this and the Alpha Anthology game. Where is it? Here it is. So if you do have both of these games, read up online on how to unlock the additional game content. It's actually kind of cool. Capcom put a few little secrets in there, which is really neat. So take some time, because it's kind of fun. This one also has a full-length movie on it, which is really cool. So it's got the Street Fighter 2 animated movie. So take some time and take a look at that. That's really cool. This kind of blew me away when Street Fighter was out, because I had a movie on it. I'm like, the movie on my PS2? All right, let's do it. So that was a lot of fun. I really liked that. And now here is my all-time favorite game, all-time. So this is my favorite Street Fighter game. I would say this is my second favorite game of all time. But here's my favorite game of all time, and that's Capcom vs. SNK 2 on the PlayStation 2. I couldn't tell you how many hours I wasted on this game. Unlocking Shinakuma, God Rugal. Just a fun game. Like, if you have a PS2, this is a must-buy. Even if you're not a Street Fighter fan, this is a must-buy. It is so fun. I got 2 copies. One is my primary, and then I got my backup in case something happens to it. Explain that in another YouTube video of mine. If you really like a game and wanted to save it no matter what, buy a backup of it just in case. These CDs scratch easy, so just saying. This game is amazing. It's so much fun, and you can emulate it. And honestly, like, it is a must-buy. If you have a PS2, it's a must-buy. Can't say. All right, sorry for the break. I didn't realize that the camera times out after 20 minutes. There's a setting I've got to change, but the video just cut out on me. I was trying to figure out what happened, and it looks like I just went over time. So I'll continue on from here. So I just finished up the PS2 collection. Now I'll move on to my Dreamcast collection. So on my Dreamcast, I've got a few games here. Street Fighter Alpha 3, Japanese version. Pretty fun. Street Fighter Alpha 3, the American version. I don't have the case for this one. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is kind of the staple if you have a Dreamcast. So this is the Japanese version. I've also got the American version of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. This one is kind of a dark horse. It wasn't really liked at the time, and then now it's probably regarded as one of the best in the series. A lot of people really like this game. It's a little different. The characters are interesting. I'm not a big fan of all of the cast, but overall, I think there's like 19 characters or something on this one. 19 or 20, I don't know. Anyway, it's okay. It's a lot of fun. The animations are second to none. They're really well done in this game. They look great. If you can find this one, pick it up. If you got a Dreamcast, it's a must-buy. Lastly, on Dreamcast, I've got Capcom vs. SNK 2. So this one it only came out in Japan. There wasn't a North American release for this game. Pardon my stuttering there. I don't know why. Anyway, it's very, very good. I highly recommend picking this one up. This one you can also emulate on Android via Recast, and it works very, very well. It's a fun game. It's a must-buy. I'm doing this kind of out of order, but we're just finishing up now. I don't have much of my collection stuff to go. So anyway, this is Street Fighter Alpha 3 for the PlayStation. I would argue that the Dreamcast version is better. This one loads. It's kind of slow. It's all right though. If you have a PlayStation, it's a must-buy. And this is a definite must-buy on a PlayStation. So this is the Street Fighter collection. So this one has 3 games in it. It's got Super Street Fighter 2. It's got just Street Fighter 2 Alpha Gold. And it's also got Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Now there is a Street Fighter Collection 2 for the PlayStation, but to be perfectly honest, this is the only one you really need. Unless, I think the other one just has Hyper Fighting on it or something, but honestly, this is the one to get. It's got Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Alpha 2 Gold on it. The only thing that's not so great about this is that it takes forever to load. So it loads between matches, before, after. It's just it takes forever to load. But I still play it, and I still play it on the Android via I think it's EPSXE that I use for the emulator. Works great. I really like this game. And the last one in my collection, this one's an oddball. I paid a grand total of $0 for this game. It is kind of interesting for me to own it, but what it is Capcom vs. SNK 2 for the Sega Naomi system. This is the Millionaire Fighting is the Japanese version of the game. The English version of the game is Millennium Fight. So it's the exact same game, except this one's called Millionaire Fighting 2001. And you'll notice that on any Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium, is the American version. The non-American version is Millionaire Fighting, which is interesting. But anyway, this is an actual arcade game that I have, and if you need, you also need to have the CD key. You can see it right there in the top to play it on the Sega Naomi system. this is really cool. It's really cool to own. It's an interesting game in my collection. Kind of rare, but not super valuable by any stretch of the imagination. The only thing that I would like in my collection that I don't have is the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo CPS2 actual board, but that one is like $500 or $200. Sometimes you see it, but it gets scooped up quick. But right now I think there's one listed for $500, which is way too expensive, and I'm not willing to pay that. But that's, I think, the one Street Fighter game that I wish I had in my collection. Overall, you can see that's my collection. I hope you enjoyed my video. I'll do more of these if people like them. I rambled on a little bit in this one, sorry it was so long, but I enjoyed doing it. So thank you, and see you guys later.